Live from Telesur English's headquarters in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sweeney Gray. Presidential nominees in Venezuela now have 24 more hours to register their candidacy at the National Electoral Council, or CNE. The electoral body said 6 candidates have presented their nomination so far. Henry Falcon was the last one to do so just after President Nicolas Maduro. According to the CNE, this decision was made to guarantee the political rights of Venezuelans. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, has sent this report.
So good evening from Caracas, Venezuela. The big news today is that the National Electoral Council have extended the period of when presidential candidates can register. Monday and Tuesday were the designated days. However, 48 hours extra has been given as a result to various political organizations urging for more time. The big news yesterday was, of course, that Henry Falcon, a leading opposition figure who was once, him and his party were once a member of the MUD coalition bloc, the Democratic Unity Roundtable. However, they have been expelled as a result of him putting forward his registry. The consensus was, of course, by the MUD to boycott and encourage abstention for the vote on April 22nd. However, it looks like Falcon has defied that rule. What does this mean for the election? Well, it certainly means that there will be more of a contest. Maduro now really has a contender. It was starting to look like a one-horse race. We'll just have to see how much of the opposition support base gets behind Falcon, with so much of it diminished as a result of the stopping and starting and changing that the MUD have imposed on their political decisions. That's all we have time for now. We will bring you updates as soon as we can.
The Venezuelan opposition has expelled Henry Falcon from the coalition after he signed up for the April election on Tuesday. The Democratic Unity Opposition Coalition is boycotting the vote, but Falcon is running for office despite a call from the opposition to boycott the electoral process. He says he will work independently of the opposition coalition, the Democratic Unity, to find a new national unity.
That's the government that we want for Venezuela, a government of national unity that includes and doesn't exclude.
Switching gears now, at the closing press conference of the CARICOM heads of government, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonzalez, reiterated the community's position on Venezuela. They will not get involved.
In relation to CARICOM's position on Venezuela, that position is well established at several meetings of CARICOM, and the principles which have been enunciated in relation to non-intervention and non-interference, and at the same time strengthening and supporting the principles of representative democracy and freedom.
And Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, says his country has responded to the increased migration of Venezuelans to the shores by trying to improve trade with its neighbor. Speaking at CARICOM's closing press conference, Prime Minister Rowley said the majority of the 30,000 to 35,000 Venezuelans in the country are there pursuing job and trade opportunities.
Those persons who have come to Trinidad looking for opportunities remain within the conditions of our Immigration Act. The most important problem for this increase in personnel and traffic has been the movement of persons who may engage in criminal conduct involving the trade in firearms and ammunition, and the persons for human trafficking.
Colombia's President Juan Manuel Santos says he's torn over whether to break peace talks with the ELN after a series of attacks. 5 soldiers were killed and more than 10 wounded early on Tuesday in a bomb attack near the Venezuelan border. The ELN then announced a ceasefire during the election period. Santos says he wants to continue the talks, but the public wants him to stop. He says he worries about how many lives will be lost. And still in Colombia, the head of the FARC political party, Rodrigo Londoño, known locally as Timonchenko, says he will continue his presidential campaign. He denied reports that he would suspend his campaign and support left-wing presidential candidate Gustavo Petro. Petro is ahead in opinion polls. Londoño is in last place in the opinion polls, and he will only be able to receive official contributions and not from individuals. He says he is still waiting for the court to authorize his candidacy so he can receive funding from the state.
Personally, and against rumors being spread by some reporters, I will not quit this race. Like it or not, I was given this task by the party, and I will embrace it fully.
As Colombia is gearing up for elections on March 11th, small parties and alternative political movements are asking for fairness for their political participation.
Presidential candidate Gustavo Petro warned about the possible fraud in the election scheduled for the 11th of March. He said that the 103,000 polling stations won't have digital service as outlined in the law.
Nobody knows if the registration officials save the data, add a zero to the number, or deletes one. There is no way to control if they manipulate that. Taking away digital systems removes control and allows frauds to take place in the elections of March the 11th.
The pre-candidate's lack of trust is not unjustified. Power has been in the hands of a few popular parties through all of Colombia's history, and alternative political forces haven't had any guarantees. The best example of this is the number of political leaders who have been murdered.
Whenever we've gotten strong candidates, they were killed. Jorge Eliezer Gaitán was the first of them, in April 9 of 1948. Our own partners in the party killed Carlos Pizarro in a plane 30 years ago when we made peace and put arms away. Colombia's way is to disappear alternative political forces or murder them if they get stronger.
Ruling groups say that they have always played a clean game in democracy. Nonetheless, history shows reality. Political power has been in the hands of elites and traditional parties for centuries.
We have very intolerant political history. Governments are always using violence. During the 19th century, we had 26 civil wars, 2 parties and an elite party system. Any alternative political system came under violent attacks.
Muchas de ellas regionales, pero 9 importantes, 2 generalizadas.
Analysts highlight that elites in Colombia have been resistant to progressive left-winged organizations, even though political freedom and opposition rights are outlined in the Constitution. In reality, that doesn't work.
Our history has been written by power groups, state groups, supported by paramilitary groups, when striking alternative forces.
After a long peace process, Colombia will now face new elections. Citizens hope that alternative forces will have some sort of guarantees that will allow them to participate, and say they won't be fooled again by fake democracy.
We take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
pagan nada, nosotros pagamos todo, pagamos lo que es tenencia, dirección, revistas, y los taxis piratas no pagan nada.
Welcome back. On Tuesday, Brazil's government officially created the Extraordinary Ministry of Public Security, but the move did not go down well with opposition parties and civil society representatives.
Raul Jungmann, the minister of the recently created Ministry of Public Security, officiated a ceremony in the Planalto Palace, the office of the president in Brazil.
That ministry was nothing more than a measure to try to calm the people in the fight against organized crime in the country. We have a country with 61,000 murderers each year. It can be compared to the Nagasaki bombing. And we have this administrative response that without a doubt is going to cost a lot and will not have any immediate effect.
Jungmann was the Minister of Defense. He will be replaced by General Silva Luna. It will be the first time since the return of democracy that a military leader will hold this type of position.
What we are seeing now is an attempt to militarize and create politicians that could grow the credibility and popularity of the government. In my opinion, it's absurd. We're handing the reins to the military. This could be repeated in other states and could even have an impact in other countries in Latin America.
According to Sandra Carvalho, a member of the Human Rights National Council, a Ministry of Public Security and the use of the armed forces will not help in the fight against crime.
Our concern is that with the creation of this Ministry of Public Security, the Ministry of Human Rights has weakened. We believe it's the wrong thing to do.
The new Ministry of Public Security is provisional, and even though it's still waiting to be approved by the Congress, its work will extend until the end of Michel Temer's term.
In Honduras, 6 people were wounded in clashes between police and protesters. The demonstration took place next to the United Nations headquarters, following the official visit of U.S. envoy Nikki Haley. Honduran opposition leader Salvador Nasrallah and former President Manuel Zelaya supported the rally. They say the police clampdown shows the government is repressing the people.
They repress demonstrators like this here in front of the United Nations that represents the whole world. What can you expect they do somewhere else? I mean, they are showing their real face and saying, we repress the Honduran people when they are just asking for their basic rights.
The Dominican Republic is ramping up efforts to keep Haitian migrants out of the country. It is increasing its military presence along its border with the poorest nation in the hemisphere. President Danilo Medina told the Dominican Congress that an additional 900 soldiers would be sent. Haiti expects to see many of its citizens return to South America from the U.S., where they were granted temporary visas in the United States, but the U.S. is planning to end that program in 2019.
This national project consists in having proper, secure and stable borders to protect our people, to protect our patrimony, but above all, to protect our territory. We understand that to be a good neighbor, to respect each other, and even to collaborate, it is also necessary to be clear about where one house begins and the other ends.
In Panama, citizens are criticizing the government for low investments in areas such as health, education, and economy.
The budget for the health ministry remains low according to popular opinion. This is leading to shortcomings for those who depend on public health.
This circumstance demands a rise in resources provided by the government, yet they seek to lower the health budget, which will exacerbate the issue.
The national budget for 2018 stands at $24 billion, an increase of 7.9% from the previous year. Nevertheless, areas such as education receive a budget of $2.5 billion, of which only 94 million are destined for investment and operations, while the rest goes towards payment of wages, Other areas, like health, received $2.2 billion, out of which only 600,000 are destined for investments. Similar to the agriculture sector, which received $132 million, and only 79 million are meant for investments.
Está debilitando el sector salud.
Health, education, and culture are well being weakened. These sectors are meant to help a country grow. We're moving backwards. We have laws that are being proposed which will only benefit the few, and what little the masses have, it's being stolen.
Aquí se están proponiendo.
Funds have caused areas like agriculture to fall into ruin, which in turn leads to a dependence on imports. This in a country which owns an interoceanic canal that contributes over $1 billion annually to the economy.
What's happening is that rent being accrued by the government, thanks to the canal, is being used so the rich don't have to pay taxes, instead of using that money for social development in areas like education, health, security, or food sovereignty.
The problem doesn't lie in the amount of resources generated by the canal, but in the investment priorities which do not benefit the majority.
Mexican federal police discovered 137 undocumented immigrants in a trailer in the city of Tamaulipas. The agents found 95 Hondurans, 37 Guatemalans, 4 Salvadorians and 1 Ecuadorian crowded in the vehicle. The driver of the trailer was arrested. The undocumented immigrants were turned over to the Attorney General's office. It's believed they were attempting to cross the border into the United States. Mexican police officers have admitted to selling 3 visiting Italians to a Jalisco criminal gang for $50. The state prosecutor's office has revealed. The South 4 police officers have not been identified, but they're believed to be 3 men and 1 woman. They are now facing criminal charges. The trio from Naples were reported missing on January 31st after arriving in Jalisco on business. A spokesman for their families called on the criminal gangs to release them or reveal where they are. The UN Deputy High Commissioner for Refugees, Kelly Clements, has urged Central American governments to keep their borders open and to take responsibility for the effects of migration. Our correspondent Gilda Silvastrucci has more.
During her visit to Central America, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Kelly Clements, has called on 6 Central American nations to take proper measures to face forced migration, such as keeping their borders open. In Honduras, the Human Rights Commissioner said that in 2017, more than 300,000 people migrated to other countries, fleeing from gang violence. Honduras and El Salvador are 2 countries with the highest migration rate in the region, since most of the public institutions haven't taken any action against violence.
Another oil reserve has been discovered off the shores of Guyana. The discovery was made by ExxonMobil in the Stabroek block. This is the 7th oil deposit uncovered by the oil giant since it started drilling in 2015. These oil fields are in the disputed area claimed by neighboring Venezuela. For over a decade, Venezuela and ExxonMobil have been fighting a legal battle over compensation. That's because the oil projects are in areas expropriated by the Hugo Chavez government in 2007. Guyana is one of the most significant new areas for oil and gas discoveries in recent years. And in Argentina, football authorities are considering stopping games when fans chant insults against President Mauricio Macri. Football games in Argentina have often been used as a platform to protest against the government. It is common to hear chants about topics not directly linked to the sport. Nevertheless, for the first time in Argentina's history, the authorities have threatened to stop or suspend the matches if anti-Macri chants continue. Time now for another short break, so join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are doing. Welcome back. 3 Nobel Peace Laureates have called for Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi to have the courage to speak out against the genocide. They've held a news conference in Bangladesh's capital of Dhaka after visiting the Rohingya refugee camps in Cox's Bazar. The laureates also plan to visit Suu Kyi in Myanmar to ask her to end the plight of the Rohingyas.
I am really sorry to see someone like Aung San Suu Kyi to turn a blind eye to the crimes that may have been perpetrated in her country and the active genocide that is taking place in her country.
In an initiative to prevent terror attacks in Indonesia, the government held a meeting between convicted militants and survivors of previous terror attacks. Indonesia's National Anti-Terrorism Agency organized this reconciliation meeting where 150 convicted militants met with the terror victims. The motive of the meeting is to bring awareness to the rise of extremism and militancy in the region. Hundreds of Indonesians are believed to have gone to Syria to join the Islamic State group.
We hope this kind of events will someday be unneeded, not because we do not care about the welfare and well-being of the victims, but hopefully people in the future will have more awareness. Then there will be no more terror and no more victims.
Time now for a look at some other stories making headlines around the world.
A freight train and passenger train have collided in northern Egypt's Beira province, leaving at least 15 dead and using force to ensure women wear the hijab. Her comments follow a string of protests, mostly in Tehran, in which more than a dozen women have stood in main thoroughfares without their headscarves.
We don't go along with that type of enforcement where there is a particular action taken against a woman. That is contrary, I think, to the basic principles and philosophy that the government of Dr. Rouhani follows.
In Greece, protesters have clashed with police outside a notary office in Athens, where electronic auctions of foreclosed properties were expected to take place. The auctions are one of the key conditions of the country's international bailout loan program. Years of austerity measures left many Greeks unable to pay property loans at banks, resulting in repossessions of homes and other properties. Slovakians have demonstrated and paid tribute to murdered journalist Jan Kuciak in Bratislava. He was killed while investigating the high-profile political corruption case. Opposition politicians have demanded that the Interior Minister and police chief step down, accusing them of failing to protect Kuciak.
And finally, artists in Poland have created the world's first feature-length animated film made entirely through hand-painted frames. The film, Loving Vincent, required 125 artists from around the globe to paint 65,000 frames, which brings Vincent van Gogh's art style to life. Working in a massive studio in the city of Gdansk, they based their oil paintings on scenes initially shot on film with actors. The film has been nominated for the Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. So for these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisiotv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talisio English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.